Let's welcome Tony D'Angelo.
So you can just feel the people gather around the radio at 7:05 on Tuesdays, ready for the one and only Tony D'Angelo. He is a must-follow on Twitter, Tony D'Angelo7. We are lucky to have him. Tony, good morning. How are you?
And I am lucky to have all you guys. Good morning, and proud to be among you. Even more lucky.
So before we get into what I know you wanted to talk about today, a lot of things happened in the last 12, 15 hours.
Well, and I can just give you a summary of this. If you've ever needed a reason, now, I am not. I believe in government. I believe you need a system of government. I believe in the United States of America. I believe in good leadership that facilitates people's freedoms and what they want to do. But if you've ever needed a reason to hate the concept of evil government, and you needed one, I mean, regardless of how you felt, last night had to do it for you. And I was explaining to people in my discussion group, the citizen has very few, I mean, assuming his right to bear arms, which is becoming more and more evidently needed, the citizen's got very few protections, but the protections the citizen has are great. And they're there, the Fourth Amendment, the Bill of Rights, the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights. These are things where the private citizen can go to the government and say, back off, you can't do that. And, what we saw last night was, who's ever in power, nothing really matters. And whether you love Trump or you hate Trump or whatever the case may be, it just showed us that government is going to start, or people in government who have, I'll use the term an evil motivation, are going to start using government for their own purposes. That is not a constitution. That is not a free state. That is not a place where people can grow. That really is effectively a banana republic. And I will say this, and I mean, it's the kind of thing where you need all interests represented. You need people to deal fully and fairly with what's there. You need a bright line between right and wrong. I will tell you this from the chair that I sit. There are people who go to government, and they are drawn to government because they have a superiority complex. They want to show who they are, and they want to show what they can do. And they get very, very angry at somebody like me that says, no, you can't do that. That's over here. That's, even though you might have been able to pull that, 36 times over, you can't do it on number 37. And that gives to me, my client, the citizen, the comfort to know that they're not going to be kicking down his door at 3 in the morning. Now, I've got a guy, who basically is paranoid. Where I've got to tell him, no, Charlie, not his real name. They're not going to come kicking down your door. We've got one more issue on this thing. What am I going to tell him today, Lee?
I know.
I mean, so these are things that are really very concerning to me, and where I tend to go the middle of the road. I tend to call the balls and the strikes. I tend to look at, things not by party, but what they really are, is because of where I have sat. I have seen the good and the evil. There's been very little good recently on the Democratic side. I'll say that. But it's this. Hey, you need a YouTube video. You need a textbook example. We got it, man. Your ball.
I tell you. So the only reason I can see why they wouldn't tell him they were coming is that they really believe that he would destroy the evidence that they're looking to grab. And what was the mechanism? Because he's still guarded by the Secret Service, so there's got to be Secret Service people at his residence. Did they warn them ahead of time? Did they know? Was there a potential for a gunfight?
Alan Dershowitz had a very good point yesterday, and I like Professor Dershowitz. To me, he's the liberal who was mugged and started to turn conservative. But you can't say anything about the guy's acumen or his belief in the Constitution. And he said what they could have done. In anything, you're entitled to two things. Any proceeding against the government. You are entitled to your representative of choice to be there while the government is there. And something like this, which essentially is not, from what we know, is not criminal, but a civil matter. They could have handed over a subpoena and said, produce those documents in that safe and whatever at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning. And there could have been, no hubbub of whatever the case may be. The other thing which I think is devastating is that whether you love Trump, love Biden, hate Biden, whoever the next president is, there is something known as the sanctity of the office of the man, the fact that, or the woman. And that when you just start piercing that because you feel like piercing that, you're saying, hey, this office doesn't matter. Now, I have to look at it, or anybody dealing with the government, they're talking about, 80,000 new IRS agents. And I said to somebody yesterday, this is going to be the training of the government by the private practitioner at taxpayer expense. But basically what it comes down to is, are these people going to come and start kicking down doors? Because, I'm not wearing a jacket saying POTUS 45.
Right. Well,
it's so frightening to me. It really is.
Doing what you do, 87,000 more IRS agents is just a Herculean headache for the American middle class, I would think. Would you agree with that?
No decent person wants this. No, believe me, anybody doing what I do with half a brain does not want this. This is a awful, frustrating, painstaking type of work, and especially in a world where they want to not look at the Bill of Rights. And that's so evident in what's gone on here, at least in state with medical rights and privacy rights and things like that. You hold the law up under somebody's nose and says you can't do it, and they turn the other way. It's a
right.
I can go on for days about that. Perhaps I will, but this is all very concerning to me.
Yeah, well, I know we've got to get to your stuff too, but also, Obama weaponized the IRS against conservatives. Who's to say that the 87,000 won't be pointed in our direction again? It makes sense. It's not impossible. It's happened before.
Well, it certainly has, and the fact that, when you have a protection that they're not willing to look at or they're not going to look at, and it's like, oh, yeah, and I get this a lot. Oh, yeah, we were wrong. We're sorry, but, you'll have to go to appeals to get rid of that lien. I had a guy that lost his livelihood because he was in the securities industry, and some idiot collection agent put a lien on where it was like the money was already there. It was like you didn't have to put the lien on, and it was like it was improper. I had to go to the supervisor. The supervisor says, yeah, we don't know why the idiot did it, but, you'll have to go to appeals to get it removed. Meanwhile, the guy had lost his job. Welcome to government. Welcome to what I do. Welcome to my perspective. That will give you something about what makes me tick for whatever it's worth.
Tony D'Angelo is with us, Tony D'Angelo7 on Twitter. Get your Twitter account up and running. If you don't follow Tony, you should. All right, you want to talk about Ned?
Let's talk about tentacles. And, this is where I'm beginning to think that even now more so, this thing's a whole lot bigger than just Donald Trump. I want to start with a little Nedcoin global corruption update. Remember, we've been talking on this show about PSERS, the Penn State Teachers Retirement Fund, that was under an FBI investigation for a year and a half. Now, notice I say was. Now, where it's relevant in Connecticut was some of the investments that were given sort of a very quizzical microscope by the people who were doing the investigating, or the Oak 3 and 4 Cayman Island funds in the Lamont family. Well, it turns out, just, hocus pocus alakazam, in July, the people at PSERS got a call from the Fed saying that the FBI has decided not to pursue a further federal investigation. And I feel, I got to call the balls and strikes, and I got to give the good news and the bad news. And just, 1.5 years of, we're looking at this thing, we're looking ahead, oh, wait, we're not going to look at it. And so all that's really left is a bunch of, kind of SEC charges and civil charges that kind of pale by comparison. And when you watch last night, Lee Elci, and you look at this, and then you just can't help but think, now there is a big push coming down from, Democrat on high saying, we're going to close up all these, whatever you want to call it, dangling participles, at least to pass the election. Well, one of two things are going to happen. We're either they'll be forgotten about, or we could, dispose of them with a couple of civil charges, or we can prosecute, but we're not going to prosecute during the course of an election because, after all, we have to win it. Now, Hunter Biden's laptop was that, but Donald Trump, you can kind of get the flavor of it. And ask yourself something. Let's bring this to our little home state. The FBI investigations with Ned, all the stuff taking place. How much have you heard in the past 4 or 5 months? I've looked everywhere. I haven't heard everything. I haven't heard anything. And it certainly seems to me that this is something which is, we're going to whitewash this canvas as best as we possibly can to make, and we're going to talk about how wonderful we are. And that certainly, there's enough pieces here to make a jigsaw puzzle, and it's a shame, but don't get discouraged. But it is discouraging.
Are you talking about from Ned's perspective or higher up?
Higher up, wherever there's some questionable thing being done by a Democratic government where a Democrat is involved, it's like we're just not going to pursue that either for right now or right never.
Well, here's what I'll say to that. Here's what I think. I believe this now. I think that they plan this out. They know exactly what they're going to do. So I think they're tiring of Biden. And I don't think they want him to run again, Tony, for 2024. So I think after the midterms, Hunter Biden's, that case will get ramped up and heated up because it's an easy way to bounce the president out of the box. And I just think that they bring the investigation where they want it. How can how can we not have had an investigation into the Hillary Clinton campaign when it comes to the emails, when it comes to the dossier that they paid for? How is that even possible? How is it possible that we know that Obama spied on Trump's campaign and nothing was done about that? Not one thing. It's very selective. They do it when they need to do it, period.
And they do it to facilitate political purposes,
exactly.
Which again speaks to the rights of the citizen to be protected by his government along with the rights of every other citizen.
It's scary.
It's terrible.
It is terrible.
And you know me. I've been accused of being Don Quixote probably my entire life. I guess that would make you Sancho Panza. But it's like when I believe you fight to the last bullet. I've always done that. I've always believed that. And where I get very angry with political parties, particularly our local GOP, is that when you see these things. Let me just come down the road a little bit on that. We talked about corruption last week. And the fact that we had a very good discussion about, and you raised a very good point about corruption not mattering to many people. Hey, I got mine. It doesn't really matter. And I am of the belief, and this I'm moved to your. I guess it was last Thursday. You were reading the article in one of the newspapers written by Terry Cowgill about Ned doesn't care about corruption because he's too rich. What does he care about this other stuff? And I'm like, that has got to be the most idiotic statement I have ever read in print, because that is the equivalent of saying that any conqueror stops at the first conquerance, or people with beautiful spouses at home don't stop in the bar at 3 p.m. and cheat. I mean, it's like, pal, you got no idea how this particular mind works. And where I do get irritated with our local GOP is that they're always playing pity pat with corruption. Corruption, we're going to look at this in just a moment, is evil, and it's real. We talk about Nashville Ned, but we never talk about Cayman Islands Ned, which is far greater. We talk about Ned with Cuomo the harasser, but we never talk about Ned with Cuomo and McKinsey and what all of that meant. And when you start to look at that, and it's like, well, how does corruption matter? And I said to myself before I did this today, what is a good statement? What is something I could just to show you what it is and how it hurts everybody? I came across something from the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime, written, the pre-woke United Nations, and they talked about the financial effects of corruption when you don't pursue corruption. This is what happens. Take a country like Africa. 25% of their GDP is lost to corruption. Take an estimate from the International Monetary Fund. The cost of bribery alone they had estimated, this is in 2016, to be between 1.5 to 2 trillion per year. Think about how wealth gets distributed to the selected cronies using the poorest pawns. Talk about the destruction of incentive. Talk about how the public is put at risk by using vendors who aren't the best vendors. And, we're going to look at something really critical here in a moment. And this is how corruption hurts every single one of it. And if you don't, and you come to the very clear conclusion that corruption is really at the root of every single item of bad government, which brings us to we've been dancing around this, but now we're going to hit it today of MyCTSavings, and I'm very grateful for the fine folks who have sent me pronouncements on this. I guess that's a nice way of saying, hey, Tony, you got to do a better job of explaining this, and I do. But basically, this is a statutory plan, and it is an automatic 3% payroll withdrawal engendered by the state. We had first looked at it in 2019 when the legislation was first drafted. And basically, it is a mandatory unless you opt out. Employers with 100 and more employees without a retirement plan have got to, submit to the plan by June 30th, 2022, 26 to 99, October 31st to 2022. Employers with 5 to 25, March 30th, 2023. Now, I do believe you can, if you really want to participate in this, which honestly I don't think you should, you can opt for a lesser payment. But it's no matter what you do in this state, no matter where it goes, it's almost automatic that we have, our press saying corruption doesn't matter, and we have very weak pushback against this. When it comes down to picking the players for the team, there's always a connection to something Lamont. Now, the first thing I looked at is a provider. This is the person processing every single financial transaction in this entire plan for state residents, for those that elect to be in. They are named Vestwell. They have a 3 out of 5 rating on Google. People are just not very happy with them. And you say to yourself, well, how does Vestwell get such a big gig? Again, corruption doesn't matter, right, folks? The Natalie Braswell, the controller, says this has happened by an open and competitive bidding process. Well, I've been up and down those minutes, and I didn't see anything about open and competitive bidding. They just kind of appeared. They're known as what's known as a robo-advisor. It's a program thing where the computer program kind of zigs and zags according to what the market is doing. Pros and cons about that and how all that works. But how they get to the fair is Ned, with no need for corruption, somehow decides on a vendor that is a major holding of a family joint venture partner. And this, of course, makes more cash available for that deal. The name of that partner is known as FinTech Collective, and they're involved with Oak HCFT and a big thing called IMO. FinTech Collective is a big investor in Acrolis, which is a Ned deal. So it's the law of the honeymooners. One hand watches the other hand, and both hands watch the face. And I tried to find the contract for Vestwell. I mean, our state contracting portal is a total and complete joke. You can't find it. I'm going to have to FOI it. I mean, and then, there'll be some song and dance about they don't want to give it to me. And if you think that's good, if you think that's, well, how do they get there? And this is how they get there. And there's other people. There's Fidelity. There's T. Rowe Price. I mean, there's other seasoned players in this thing. We end up with Vestwell. Why do we end up with Vestwell? Well, I think we got a reason. Vestwell is hooked up with a money manager known as Lockwood Advisors. These are the people that are actually doing the investment picking. If you look at the performance figures on the site, I mean, they're dreadful. Markets haven't been good, but basically the problem is when you have a robo-advisor is they set something in a groove, and then when things, and this goes on with mutual funds all the time, when things move too quickly where, people can't catch up to it, the funds lose value. Lockwood Advisors has 2 SEC sanctions. Not one, but 2. And you think there's any information on that on our, MyCTSavings website? I mean, well, guess again. And I mean, it's I mean, you look at this stuff and you just get beside yourself. Nobody in the political world yells about it. Nobody screams about it. And, I think the good news, and let me just say this, if you fall subject to this, you can opt out of it. The opt-out number is 1-833-811-7436. I'll read it again, 1-833-811-7436. And I, talk with a financial advisor you trust as you need to provide for your retirement. I don't think this is a good thing to do. So my first thing is nobody pushes back against this. You've got GOP appointees to this committee. And, I mean, if Bob Stefanowski becomes governor, I mean, it's like, Bob, are you going to unravel this deal? The question is, can Bob even begin to unravel the deal? What if it's a 20-year contract? I mean, this kind of stuff just goes on, and I just lose my mind when people don't push out against corruption, or you have, somebody saying, well, something like this doesn't matter to Ned. That's how much it matters to Ned Lee Elci.
So next year, people are going to, depending upon where they work, and you gave the dates out again, we can go over that again down the road, but they're going to start taking 3% out of everybody's paycheck.
For 3%, you can opt for a lesser percentage unless you just entirely opt out and say, I do not want to do this, which I think really is a wise thing to do.
But they're going to do it. Were they going to do it without telling you? It's just going to happen.
Well, hopefully your workplace serves you notice. But yeah, you might get some goofy payroll clerk. Hey, what's that off my check?
And then and it's going to go and get parked in a 401k type of a scenario.
It's going to be in a cash fund, and then if you don't do anything with it, they're going to put it in what they call a target fund, where assuming your birth year is 1960. And they're going to assume a retirement of 5 years away. They're going to put it in a target fund of 5 years away, written on a computer, supposedly taking into account everything that's going to happen in 5 years. And you're trying to decide that today. Believe me, it's.
Right.
I mean, leaving aside all the questionable stuff and how this person got there and whatever, I don't think that's a sound financial strategy. I mean, you have to be able to look at things and move quickly today. Things just move too quickly.
Yeah, but it just seems, how dare they ask to do this without asking him? I don't get this. We have to go over this more when we have more time. We got to do some more, not necessarily next week, but we got to sit down and sort of go over this again, because this is sort of making me furious again. Just like
it was passed legislatively. It was not put to a referendum. And this is something they decided to do because we all need to save for retirement. Well, again, government is going to be the solution for that. I mean, God help us, please.
Oh, man. All right, Tony, great stuff. I appreciate it. We'll talk soon. I got to run.
Okay, pal.